they run a risk of like creating other damage in different parts of the car by not properly knowing how to use those tools and things like that.
Welcome to another episode of the Collision Vision, driven by Autobody News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. As you've noticed, we are well underway with our new format here in 2026, and we're having a blast with it. I hope you're enjoying it. At the same time, certain conversations with amazing entrepreneurs and business leaders come up that aren't necessarily a perfect fit in this format, and it would be doing you and me an injustice by not having them on for some one-off conversations. One such guest is here with us today to discuss the ever-evolving world of auto glass and training. Today, we're talking about a piece of the collision ecosystem that impacts safety, cycle time, customer experience, and revenue with a guest who's become one of the brightest and most present leaders in the space. Joining us is Shauna Davis, president and founder of Kaizen Glass Solutions. Shauna came into Collision through tooling and training for glasswork, recognized a critical gap in how technicians were being prepared for today's tech-intensive vehicles, and then went and built a business on continuous improvement. That's what Kaizen means, by the way, to train collision centers and elevate glass repair as a strategic capability. We'll explore Shauna's story, why the industry has a training shortage around glass and a potential blind spot, how that intersects with ADAS and calibration, and how operators can think about glasswork as a real part of the business moving forward. Enjoy the show. Shauna, thank you so much for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Looking forward to an awesome conversation. Yours is a name and your organization's name is one that I've heard forever. And so super cool to spend some time with you in some of our pre-show conversations. Very, very apparent we're going to have an awesome talk here today. Before we dive into that, tell us about you. What's your background and what led you to, I guess we'll stop at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey.
Okay. So a little bit about me. My journey actually into auto glass definitely was not my plan to build my career in the auto glass world. I didn't really even know about it other than that I drove a vehicle that had auto glass in it. But my first job that kind of led me into the automotive industry, I worked for the service department in at Fred Haas Toyota in Spring, Texas. And that kind of jump-started me into the auto world, if you will. I gave me a little bit of experience. And then shortly after that, I kind of had the life shift and found myself back in Austin, needing a job, landed a temporary receptionist position at an auto glass tool company. And, it just was a job at that point. No, definitely future in there. I was still working on what I was going to do and those kind of things. But shortly after I started there, they actually put me through a training program for a week that was then hosted by the National Glass Association, the NGA. And there is where it kind of like all came together for me. I learned that windshields are not just keeping the wind out of your hair kind of thing as you're driving down the road. They're actually like a big structural piece of a vehicle, and it helps, with the roof crush, keep the roof from caving in on somebody when they have a rollover accident. It helps airbags deploy. I had no idea about these things, and I learned that windshields are pretty much the largest safety device in somebody's vehicle. So it was like really interesting. I kind of felt like an aha moment. Like, I feel like this is my mission to, educate people of what this is all about and why they should pay attention to who they're working with for repairs and things like that. So after that training, I had like a real life experience of my own. Prior to working there, I had my windshield replaced, and we were testing some stuff, and they took my windshield out, and they were like, whoever did your job was horrible. Like, you're lucky. And it was one of those things that I realized that had I had an accident during that time frame, I would have had like an in-flight experience that I really didn't prepare myself or had no intention of signing up for by any means. So it was like that was kind of one of those other moments. Then during getting started into all of this, it was like wow, it really hit home of what this is all about, and it really kind of struck that care moment, like kind of struck that passion that I have now that still burns today. So after that, things just kind of quickly evolved. From the receptionist position, I moved to marketing, went to sales and marketing manager, and then ultimately became the global sales and marketing director for the company, traveling the world, doing demonstrations, trade shows, building relationships, all of those fun things,
Racking up those air miles too. My goodness.
Honestly, there were some moments that I just pinched myself, like, first of all of this because of Autoglass, like who would have thought? Definitely not me. That I would have had a really great opportunity and life experience and stuff and growth opportunities all because of Autoglass. So that was something I was very fortunate for during, just learning about the industry, building those relationships and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at today, or why I'm at where I'm at right now. That's how
I love it. Well, it's such a great perspective too, and I think it's a good reminder for the entire industry. Anything that touches collision repair, it might feel commoditized, it might feel basic. Ultimately, it's life and death in so many cases, repairing different components of the vehicle the right way. And it's what it comes down to. Obviously, we're all here to make money too, but that's kind of goal number two. Number one is you got to protect people who are
Yes.
putting their faith in you and their family's safety in your hands. So really good stuff. So we talked a little bit in the pre-show call on your path toward entrepreneurship and that burning desire within you to do your own thing. It doesn't seem like you started your career in glass and in the periphery of the collision industry with this in mind, but ultimately that's what it evolved into. Talk to me about the problem or gap in the industry that you consistently saw that made you say, someone has to solve it. Why not me?
Yeah. So, definitely on the training aspect of it, on the collision world, I was a big point of contact for people in collision that were looking to bring Autoglass in-house and learn how to do that. And there were so many gaps in yes, there was maybe a few options for people to choose from, but I really saw an opportunity of meeting people where they're at. Not necessarily like, yes, sign up for the class. Like we want your tuition money. We want all of that. But like, it's more than that. It's more about being supportive and, following up with them, making sure that they have the resources and the tools that they need for it beyond just, learning the steps and the process of it. So, as far as like learning the gap or like identifying, that's kind of what I saw. I mentioned I was the point of contact for a lot of these people that were looking to bring glass in. And there was a bigger, just a bigger picture for me when I saw that. Like, it's beyond Autoglass. There's other things that they need to know about, that Autoglass connects to, So I just wanted to be able to have something and create something that was meeting people where they were, or where they're at, or where they want to go, even. And then being able to provide the service that I really believe in, the customer service aspect of helping people. There's no secret. We all want to make money, right? So, let's just get that out of the way. Everybody's, in business to make money. But for us, and especially for me, it's more about helping people and educating them on the right way to do things.
100%. And, talking about making money, so much of the last year or so in collision repair, we faced headwinds. And to get a little bit creative and consider bringing more services and offerings in-house is something I think a lot of folks have pondered and gone through that thought exercise. And so definitely want to dive through the calculus there. Now, you realize the problem, the gap in the industry. You were sort of already filling this gap as an employee of somebody else, whether that was actually part of your job or not. Walk us through the origin of Kaizen Glass Solutions and talk about kind of what you do and where we are today.
Yeah. So, how I started and how that transition and everything is really just creating something that was independent. Like, a lot of training, our good training is you have to be, a certified shop in order to go through a training program. You have to work for a company to be able to learn how to do or go through their own training program and internal at that company. Or it's a tool manufacturer that wants to do product training. So I really wanted to create a space that was independent of all of that. Again, meet you where you are. Like, you want to learn this, you want to bring it in. There's no obligation. There's no, criteria. You can sign up for our class and we will help you get where you want to be the right way. Right. No hidden agenda, a part of
no
that.
slant, no products you're trying to sell. Right on.
Genuinely here to help you to do these things. And not even, in the collision world, but people wanting to shift gears or maybe go out on their own and things like that too. It's beyond just working with a body shop or a collision shop. So that was number one, being able to have a space like that. And then again, be able to add on other features, like you mentioned. People are looking for other ways to make money. To me, you already have a vehicle in your shop if you're a body shop or a collision, right? You already have it there. You have a prime opportunity. Take the marketing out of it. Take, pounding the pavement. You already have a vehicle there that you could actually be offering services to, instead of outsourcing it to, a sublet vendor or bringing somebody else in or, things like that. So that's kind of, where I saw the aha moment, if you will, to start Kaizen and really what my mission and what is the driving power behind what we're doing so far. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, and it comes down to a math equation. The headwinds in 2025 were no joke. We all know it. If claims volume or collision repair volume as a whole is down 25, 30%, and you want to keep growing, maybe take a look at the cars that are already in your shop. How can we expand our offering to better serve the customer? And, oh, by the way, make up for some of that revenue and profitability that might be not coming in the door. Walk me through the name. Why the name?
Yeah. So are you familiar with Kaizen? I think a lot of people
educate us.
Okay, great. So I've always just loved things like this, where it's like, yes, go on to improve yourself, put your best foot forward. Just power of tiny gains, if you've read the book, sort of thing. So I definitely believe in all of those statements and the mottos of the 1% better every day. Like, you just have to do a little bit more, than you did yesterday, and eventually you'll get there, no matter what headspace that you're in or anything. But prior to figuring out the name, I had a whole list of options. And then ultimately, I even took Kaizen certified training, just because I really dove deep into the meaning and how it started and what you do with it. It's kind of like that Six Sigma kind of program and all of that. And, the 5 principles of Kaizen, where it was go to Gemba. Well, I learned that Gemba was training. You go to the place where you go train. So, and it's know your customer. You have to be able to know who you're selling to and know how you're going to be able to solve their problems or help them with their problems in order to serve them. And then, another principle is be transparent. Be transparent in your delivery, your pricing, your motive, your, all of those things. So it really struck a chord with me of what I was trying to do ultimately. And especially in the place that I was in, just life in general. It just really kind of was the missing puzzle piece as far as name was concerned. So
love it. Now, how long has Kaizen been around today?
So we're going on our 3rd year so far. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, I want to talk about where we are today, what you're offering, what you're doing for the industry. But I'm intrigued by a couple things on how businesses get running. We already talked on one, which is the brand. I'm fascinated by all that stuff. Number 2 is, how did entrepreneurship treat you getting started? You were a longtime corporate employee. How were the first 6 to 12 months off on your own, getting things started? How did that kind of go over for you?
Scary, if I just be honest. scary in a way of just taking the leap, of like, okay, here we go, let's take the jump. But ultimately, it felt like I was doing what I've been doing for the past 20 years, for somebody else. Just because it was my same mentality, the same process. I'm also still reaching the same kind of clientele and stuff like that. So it felt very natural and like a routine for me. Obviously getting started in business was, we launched everything. I think within 3 months, we finally had our first student that signed up, and so I was like, okay, we got one, here we go. But within this first 6 months, even, it was a little slow going, but people were talking. And that was the biggest thing for me, is obviously, who I am in the industry, but what we were doing and what we were providing, and the network that I had to get the word out about, the training opportunity and how we were doing it. Word started spreading, and that was really exciting. So a little slow going, definitely learned some lessons. I put, money into certain things that that didn't pay off for us, but, it's one of those trial and errors that you learn when you're starting your own business of yes, I think this is the best idea ever. And yes, I will give you X amount of thousands of dollars. But then, you realize that return, even though it may be, a longer return on your investment, probably wasn't the best way to spend that initial money at the beginning. So,
well, firsthand the value of getting that customer in the door and how challenging it is as an entrepreneur. I think a lot of folks in this industry, we might have been doing it for so long, or it never was really an issue, that we forget how valuable that car in the shop is and the opportunities that leads to. So love it and appreciate you sharing that origin story with us. I want to get kind of a little more into the operational weeds at this point. We talk about glass, and collision is such an interesting industry in that historically it's been pretty compartmentalized, right? A lot of sublet vendors, a lot of outsourcing certain components of the cradle to grave. Car comes in the shop, car comes back to the customer, ready to go. To that point, glass is often treated as a separate job entirely from collision repair. Do you think it's important for us to rethink that?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. I think it's, I definitely advise anybody that's coming to us that's wanting to bring their glass in houses, don't fire the glass guy. don't burn the bridge to your glass guy, because you will need them. But I think absolutely, it's one of the best things that shops can do today. What's funny to me, or funny to the glass world, is that the body guys, they're scared of glass. They're scared of it. And it's you're welding and you're taking all these pieces and making sure that everything's structurally sound in this vehicle. But a lot of them are terrified to touch the glass. And so I think because glass, no matter what they're working on, it touches every piece of that vehicle. So I think for shops, it just absolutely makes sense for them to do it, know how to do it properly, and have the backup plan to make sure that they're working with somebody that knows how to do those things properly too, and are educated in that.
Makes total sense. And it's funny to hear that, right? These technicians in collision repair, they're kind of the closest thing you can get to a rocket scientist without being a rocket scientist. Funny to think little old glass would be a scary thing for these extremely talented folks. What are some of the biggest misconceptions shop owners have about auto glass and bringing that in-house, and what that might mean from a financial and operational perspective?
Yeah, the biggest misconception is what I just mentioned, is that they have to get rid of their sublet vendor. We definitely advise them not to do that. They will ultimately need some sort of, whether it's a backup plan or just specialty repairs and things like that. But another misconception is how challenging it is. So the cost that's involved with it, the tooling, how to get glass, if they're not just necessarily using OE glass, how do they get the urethane, the most critical piece of it all, of how it all makes it work, right? How to make sure that it's staying in the vehicle, how to get those resources. So I think that they get a little, and you go down the Google rabbit hole, or some of the social media forums that are out there, and some of them may be a little helpful, others may not be. They may you may have to do a lot more digging to be able to find the right answer. So I think the biggest misconception is the price that it costs to invest in getting that in-house, the training aspect, and then the resources that you have of like where to start kind of thing.
It's multiple fold when I talk to people about bringing certain things that were traditionally sublet in-house, and the obvious low-hanging fruit is more revenue, more profitability. I imagine there are some customer benefits as well. How would glass being tied into the day-to-day operations of a shop impact customer experience? Something that's super important, really more now than ever.
Right. Cycle time. I always say, and I've said it for 15 plus years, I always say, if it's not about time, it's about money, and and vice versa. So for cycle time, that's huge for a shop, huge. And, imagine peak season, a hailstorm that's coming in your area. You have all of these damaged vehicles, and you're waiting for the glass company that you're working with to fit you in the schedule. Right. So that just causes a major delay within days, maybe even weeks too, to just be able to have somebody take it out or to put it back in so you can go on to the next step in your procedure. So I think that's the ultimate reason. Obviously, quality control would be the next one. Making sure that things are done right, especially for OEM approved, like certified shops. Those procedures matter. Yeah, I mean, they matter anyway, right? But they really matter for today's vehicles. Just with the technology in it, a lot of shops are already doing calibration on their own, already in-house, and they're still subletting glass. So why are you taking that piece, that one step out, and having to wait when you could just continue this whole cycle of what you're needing to do? So it can go on and on, but those are kind of things, the main things that I see as far as better serving your customers is the time that the vehicle's in your shop.
You mentioned quality control, and this comes up all the time on the ADAS piece of the conversation, and it's liability. And I think the easy mile high view of a benefit of subletting ADAS is, it's on someone else, not my liability. Ultimately, though, that's not the truth. As we've learned, and I think we'll continue to learn, there's no better protection from liability than making sure it's done right. And if it's in your control and the quality control, I like that impact on making sure you're returning the vehicle in proper condition.
Yeah, on the liability front, whether you sublet it or not, you're still responsible.
Yeah.
It's your name on that invoice and on your on the insurance information that did those repairs. So, yes, there's, a sublet vendor involved, but ultimately that's coming back to you no matter who you use, right? So why not make sure that it's done correctly with your own people or yourself,
Yep. Increase what you can control, right? We always talk about controlling what you can control. You can control how much of the process you're controlling. So it makes total sense. Now, I mean, you've struck a chord. We're talking about being in the third year of Kaizen. It seems like the timing is really good. Like there's some timely conversations happening around training. Why is the need for training in the glass space? Why is that feeling so timely today?
It's the ADAS features and the technology in vehicles. We like to say in some of our presentations that windshields are rolling technology now. It's like the house that's kind of connecting a lot of these features that work in the vehicles. So whether it's even, side glass, windshields, back glass, these, those are big housing components for this technology. And again, it's that step, that you can't sublet anymore, that you can't overlook. You can't say, oh, I don't want to do that anymore, especially, with all of the regulations and laws that are coming out that are related to the ADAS features and vehicles, liability. Just the risk that you have by not doing that yourself or not knowing what to do and who to be working with. That's the biggest thing I think that's driving that, full force on the training side.
We talk about technicians being a little weary about getting into the glass side of the business. You mentioned that beautifully earlier in our conversation. What are the biggest skill gaps you see when collision technicians are first getting involved in working with glass or some other diagnostic tools?
As far as like skill gaps, I wouldn't say there's a whole lot of gaps. I think it's more about, the fragile piece of it, knowing like on the tooling side of things, knowing how to properly use tools, because if they don't, if they do a wrong placement, I don't want to get too technical, but, I don't know how much time we have for this, but, but there's certain tooling and methods that people use when they're removing a quarter glass of how you place, a wire or core tool on the vehicle. And if they place it wrong, maybe they're placing it on, the roof area. Well, the roof is, glass now. So, they run a risk of like creating other damage and different parts of the car by not properly knowing how to use those tools and things like that. So I wouldn't say that there's much of a gap, but I think it's just the learning curve of, learning how to do these procedures and, if it's a quarter glass, back glass, bent glass, things like that.
Makes total sense. Now, you mentioned even in a past life, you were doing a lot of this training, albeit many of the folks out there training,
Yeah.
it's slanted towards some sort of ulterior motive. Walk me through how you guys do approach training operationally. How is it delivered? What are the benefits? What do you guys do differently from everybody else out there?
What we do differently is, like I mentioned, we meet people where they are. So we do have our main training center. We have host locations in two other states, and a couple other locations too, beyond that. But we also offer on-site training. So we're able to pack up, our program and put it on the road and come to them, especially for larger shops that have, 6 to 10 technicians or even larger than that. We kind of meet them where they are, literally, at their location. And then beyond that is, again, just understanding what they're looking for. Like those are kind of like the Q&A questions. It's like, what's your goal? Are you just really working on just for them to take it out? They're not necessarily looking for public service. They just want to service the cars that are in their shop right now. How do I do that? Right. So, we just kind of evaluate what they're wanting, and how we can get them there. And then also, I'm very proud of what we do, for our students and the companies that we work with, is that our support doesn't end and, after the class is over. Like you still hear from us. Our instructors still answer the phone for their students. They're in the middle of a job and they, call them when they need help. It's not difficult for them to get a hold of us to be able to help them. So that's something I'm very proud of course, because there's nothing like being stranded on a vehicle, or with a customer, or, meeting a deadline or anything like that, and then being stuck for something very simple that we could help them through and walk them through it. So, and then we also provide a lot of resources too. So beyond just our training programs, just the resources that we offer people, whether it's connecting through auto glass distributors, software, even there's a lot of shops that, they use the software for, the collision side, but it's not necessarily glass friendly for quoting or adding it to the estimate. Like they're reliant on somebody else's information. So we have a lot of resources that we provide for people to be able to have access to that.
That continued relationship and making sure you're there for past students or customers or what have you. I mean, that's the difference between being around for 3 years versus being around for the long haul. And so
Yeah.
very cool to hear. And I know that's a valuable mindset, certainly in this industry where it's a big industry, but a small world. You mentioned it earlier, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. The glass business has changed. Technology has changed. This is one big glass computer within a rolling computer that we call a vehicle. Collision has evolved. What trends in glass technology? And you mentioned the sensors to bonded glass to calibration. What are we overlooking here? What are the challenges, and where is this industry going?
I think it's connecting. I think the bridge is finally being built between the two. I think that glass and collision are finally working together again. I definitely think that it's going to be continuing that way for a very long time, if not, forever now. As far as other things, I mean, it's the technology, the procedures, the regulations too that are coming with it. I mentioned the most critical piece for glass is the urethane part, right? Like that's what makes it all stick together, literally. So if they're not staying current on that kind of thing and paying attention to what new technology and adhesives and how that applies to the vehicles that they're working on. But other than that, we've kind of already hit most of the things that I can think of right now. Yeah.
Changing so quickly. And I think for business owners in the space who are not really thinking about bringing glass, for example, in-house, there's probably an element of drinking through a fire hose already just on keeping up with the core components of collision repair. But to your point, and it feels like it's not speculation or opinion, but fact, this industry is trending much more and really quickly into this consolidated one-stop fix all, maybe not for all customers, but for your core customers. Makes total sense. Now, you've seen at this point the operations of a lot of body shops out there. You've seen folks who have invested heavily into incorporating these services into their business. You've seen people who haven't, and probably now, given the benefit of hindsight, wish they had. What's the most surprising result you've seen from shops that have gone all in on making sure their glass capability is there?
What's surprising, I have one surprise moment. I mean, not one, but one that just comes to mind, and it's actually a dealership, and it's something that in my lifetime I have never seen a dealership that's focused on selling cars and maybe using their own collision center to repair cars, right? I've never seen them make a commercial that's advertising that they offer glass and calibration services to the public. Not buy the car from me, but hey, we can also, we are an auto glass shop, right? Like we can do these things. So that was one of the things that was really, in my lifetime, or at least maybe they do exist, but, so far I have never seen a dealership run a commercial, like live commercial, just solely focused on their auto glass service. And to date, they are making 6 figures just on the auto glass side. And their initial investment was they sent 3 people over a course of time within 6 months. They sent 3 people of theirs for 3 different locations. I think their investment with tooling and training was under $10,000.
Wow.
And each month they're making over 6 figures in revenue. Yeah.
Talk about an ROI. That's
right.
Fantastic case study.
Is the person that we originally worked with that came to us to start sending his technicians to us has been promoted. I mean, he's made this presentation and made this case like a case study. He built this case study to be able to share with all of their other, auto group locations too. So awesome. Yeah, win-win for all of us.
There you go. And it's all about win-wins, right? And I think another side effect, and you might shoot me down here and say, no, haven't really seen that. However, have you seen glass training and making this an important part of the business, or even calibration and ADAS being looped in? Have you seen that kind of aid in the recruitment for the next generation of talent? Because every conversation here on the Collision Vision at some point, I'll need to fact check this, but it's like 100%. Gets into something around the talent shortage. It's such a big concern.
No, I do. And I really, one of the goals, obviously, for us is to make sure that we're doing our part to have a better job placement program for people that are wanting, one of our big focuses is working with the local high school auto tech programs and even some of the technical colleges that offer a collision program. Not many of them offer a glass. They may touch on the glass maybe 2 days out of their whole program, and so as we know, that's not necessarily the most efficient training for somebody that's wanting to do glass or be able to just add to their skills, when they're looking for something like that. So that's something that I really would love to grow more, to be able to have a more hybrid role. We always say for the younger generation, like, why not add the skill? Like, we make it affordable for one, and easy for you to get into. There's no wait list kind of thing. It's a short program. You have the support, ongoing support kind of thing. So to me, if I had a collision shop, I would rather hire somebody that has all those lists of skills instead of having to reinvest in them, right?
Sure.
Later on. So yeah, I think the job placement thing is really a big thing. I think we could all do a lot better and more with that.
Making it as easy as possible to hire good new entrants into the industry not only benefits you, listener, as a company and as an organization, but the industry as a whole. And I know there's a push around ADAS being kind of this sleek, technology forward, kind of sexy path into the industry. There's a lot of the same elements on the glass side too that I think will resonate with young people.
I do too. And what we love to do, like I mentioned, how we try to reach, the high school auto tech programs. We love to educate them. You don't have to be the body guy. You don't have to be the paint guy. Like, you can actually be the glass guy in one of these shops, like, that's the way that things are looking. I mentioned that dealership, the three people that they sent training, they were a part of the service department. They were working on cars, like doing all of the different replacements and stuff. And now they are in their own little glass corner. Like, that's what they do. And what they say about it is, I love not getting dirty all day. Like, I mean, sure, you get dirty, but not like what you did when you were, changing brakes and, fixing panels and paint, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really cool to be able to educate and share that there's other, career paths that, are very profitable. You can make a lot of money, whether it's for yourself or just your hourly wage with somebody by doing this line of work.
Absolutely. Now, I want to get back a little bit to your kind of personal story again before we part ways. And I want to clarify this question first by saying you are a founder, you're a CEO in this industry, full stop. You're also a female founder in a space that's historically male dominated, right? Plenty of amazing women leaders in this industry, but you're in the minority there from that regard. Did you face any challenges or advantages kind of coming in as a female founder in the collision repair ecosystem? Would love to hear your story, because I think there's a lot of people in that seat now or aspiring to be where you are now that could benefit by learning your story.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes. I'm very proud to have such a role like this and the space that we are, like the collision and the glass side of things, and both of them. When I started, like, especially when I started traveling and doing demonstrations and trade shows and stuff, absolutely. It was eye-opening of being passed by where, like, sidestep to go talk to the male representative for the company that I worked for. What's really cool is, a couple of years after those moments were happening, is those male, employees would literally bring that person back to me, because I was the one that had the answer, that they all went to me anyway. So, like, they literally had to bring the customer back to me to find out the answer what they were asking. But absolutely, there's a lot of, she doesn't know what she's talking about, like, it was more of like, you have to make sure that you're putting forth your knowledge and being confident in that and what you're able to provide for them, the answers, the questions, the technical support and things like that. One thing that I think really helped me was just staying connected, like staying on top of like what's going on in our industry, not in just back then, not just the glass world, but like, what are other people talking about? What are our collision customers, what are their concerns, and like paying attention to like what they're struggling with. And just so you have a better understanding that, it's not just a glass problem that they're having, like it's a bigger problem, right? So I think that was one of the big things that kind of started separating me from the rest on the female side, of just like of how people approach me and the respect that they would give me over time. And like the knowledge, that you bring, like being confident, be the doer of it, not just the sayer, and like what you're talking about, but actually, showing them that you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. So yeah, definitely. Luckily, things have shifted since then.
Yeah.
There is still, pardon the term, but there is still the boys club that goes on, and so it still does exist today, but because of my growth as a person in general and in this industry, I know those people are growing too, and eventually they'll get there.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I so appreciate the look behind the curtain there, and your willingness to address that, because one day I hope to not even have to ask that question, right? You're just the founder, but gosh, it seems like we are trending in the right direction in this industry, but we're not there. And I think more and more stories like yours and people who are doing what other women in the industry or future women in the industry would like to do and would like to envision themselves doing. I think it's the most powerful thing that we can do is share those stories and address those questions head on. So thank you for that. You've been so generous with your time here today. I've had an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I want to kind of wrap this up, and then I'll get some contact information from you and stuff. But one kind of question to bring this all together for collision shop owners who maybe still outsource every bit of their glass work, what's the first move you'd recommend they make to start bringing that in-house?
So I recommend looking at what you're doing now. Don't just like find the class and send somebody, right? Like you need it to make sense. I would look at what you're spending on your sublet vendor. If you don't have a lot of glasswork and you have a good person that you're working with, and we have a question, that we can help you to make sure that you're working with a good person, but do that evaluation first. Make sure it makes sense for you to invest that. Ultimately, it's a good idea, down the road, but initially, like, is this something that you have to do within the next 3 months? That's kind of what that evaluation will provide you. If it is, you have the resources now to be able to get it done, that quickly. But I think ultimately it's just putting those numbers together, the time too, how long that job had to wait because of anything glass related, that you were waiting for a vendor to show up, or calibration, or, any of those pieces that connect it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. For folks who want to reach out, learn more about Kaizen, connect with you, and follow along with your journey, where can they do that?
So kaizenglasssolutions.com. Email address is easy, Shauna at kaizenglasssolutions.com. We also have our main number, 512-843-1416.
Wonderful. And if it's okay with you, we first got connected on LinkedIn. You guys put out some great content. I will go ahead and include all of that information plus a link to your LinkedIn page in the show notes. But Shauna, thank you so much for joining us on the Collision Vision. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Cole. It was a pleasure of mine too. Appreciate it.
That wraps up our conversation here on the Collision Vision with Shauna Davis of Kaizen Glass Solutions, a real leader in bringing training tools and intentional capability development to the glass side of collision repair. If there's one takeaway from today's episode, it's this: don't underestimate glass. As tech gets more complex, as insurance documentation tightens, and as consumer expectation evolves, glass becomes a strategic differentiator. Learning it well, training intentionally, and investing in people isn't a cost, it's an edge when the opportunity is there. Thank you for listening. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share this episode with your network. On behalf of the Autobody News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.